Hey, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Catherine Rank and I'm the co-director of the planning program in the Department of Geography and Planning. And just want to begin by acknowledging that our disciplines, geography and planning, as key forces of settler colonialism and imperial domination, have a difficult history in relation to the lands on which we work. And that specifically the land on which the University of Toronto operates has for thousands of years been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca and the Mississauga of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. There was at one point an expanded version of this U of T land acknowledgement on the First Nations House website, which added, "This sacred land has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years and was the subject of a dish with one spoon wampum belt covenant between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee confederacies to peaceably share and care for the resources of the Great Lakes." So 15,000 years of human activity sharply contrasts with Canada's 150th birthday in 2017. And the recognition of the dish with one spoon wampum implicitly reminds residents of their obligation to take care of the land, which is, of course, an apt injunction for planning and an ethic that infuses the subject of tonight's talk, the history of the Kensington Market Community Land Trust. So I'm especially grateful for, I'm grateful for the ethic of thanks and acknowledgement that underpins that land acknowledgement, and don't know how to proceed really without acknowledging the painful situation we all find ourselves in, with two wars raging in the world and the grief we are all feeling for the victims of those conflicts. And let me just say that in addition to the land and the relations on it, I am grateful especially for the opportunity to gather for events like this, which are about open dialogue and collective learning. Grateful for all of you who could make it, and sending good wishes to those in our community who could not, and we hope to see them next time. So it's a pleasure to be here this evening to welcome everyone to join the John Bousfield Distinguished Visitorship in Planning public lecture with our special guest, Professor of Practice Dominque Russell, who will be introduced in a moment by Planning Program alum, Community Land Trust advocate, and inspiring planning educator, Chi Tam. But I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge John Bousfield, in whose honor the Visitorship in Planning was established, and also colleagues from the firm Bousfields Incorporated, which is a preeminent community planning firm in Ontario. I'm not sure if anyone is here tonight from Bousfields. Wave if you are, I don't see so. It's usually headed up by partner Tony Volpentesta, who holds kind of a well-baked by now degree from our program. I also want to take the opportunity to acknowledge former instructor of our graduate program, Mitch Goldar, whose generosity, together with the Glen Corporation, Greywood Developments, and the estate of James Stewart, and the U of T Connaught Fund, made this visitorship and tonight's talk possible. So the Visitorship in Planning was established at our department to pay tribute to one of North America's foremost urban planners. In a career that spanned 5 decades, John Bousfield was consistently at the forefront of Toronto area's most groundbreaking and community and land use planning projects. The purpose of the visitorship is to integrate the real world practice of planning more closely with academic teaching and research at a critical stage in the education of aspiring planners. And students have the opportunity through our visitors to interact in stimulating debates with cutting edge leaders in the field. And the intent is to help prepare them to meet the challenges of our complex and changing discipline. The visitorship also enriches us as a faculty, and we hope the local community as well, by learning from accomplished scholars and practitioners from around the world. And I guess back to the point earlier about collaborative learning, the real importance of the visitorship is that it creates a forum to draw members of our community together to share experience, stimulate debate, open channels of dialogue, and create opportunities to problem solve. So it is my distinct pleasure, therefore, to shift now to focusing on tonight's speaker and one of this term's visitors through the Bousfield program, Professor of Practice Dominque Russell. Her talk will no doubt elicit all of the above objectives of the program. I need to first thank the staff and colleagues at U of T Geography and Planning who made the Bousfield program happen. Alan Walks, my co-director, Michael Widener, program administrator, Maria Wright, and for tonight, especially Jasmine Kara at the back there, who is our events coordinator. To introduce Dominque and the talk, I want you all to please welcome alumna Chi Tam, who is Managing Director of Toronto Chinatown Land Trust, former Executive Director of Kensington Market Community Land Trust, which hired her and mentored her while she was still a student in our program, a course instructor with Keisha St. Louis McBurney of a U of T graduate course called Planning and Designing for Community Power, very popular. And finally, is currently, or not finally, but also is currently Canadian Urban Leader at U of T's School of Cities. So welcome, Chi.
Well, this is fun. I'm here to tell you why you're going to have a special amount of fun and why I'm really thrilled that we're in this room tonight. So I have a very unique vantage point with all of my many connections, obviously to the planning program that you just heard, but also to Dominque specifically, personally. I think CLTs have obviously become now, in this moment, through so many people in the room, Josh particularly, someone who's not here, Cooney, that needs to be named, that made these connections in the first place and made it possible for someone like me who came to planning because we wanted to help, but then became very, very in despair once we started learning more about the situation and saw that there actually were very few ethical ways to apply our skills and technical abilities until we find people in the community, in our neighborhoods, in everyday life, lifting people up in ways that Dominque does. I feel extremely lucky that that was my first path out of this particular institution. And many people have heard of CLTs now. If you're interested in housing, and particularly in Toronto, they've become significant in the planning sphere because of all sorts of reasons that are nerdy and esoteric and technical. We've invented, from Kensington Market, in a way, I would argue, the working class invented mixed use before zoning could make sense of it. This place offered so many things that urbanists now adore and love to hype up and talk about in ridiculous ways that make them look ridiculous, but that communities like Kensington Market with people like Dominque know inherently in their bones. But the thing that I have always felt angsty about is that the actual people who hold all the knowledge of how to make good trouble, how to antagonize the right people, how to make connections with the right people, and how to take care of a community like Dominque are not afforded the time to just sit and think and reflect on all of that everyday practice that actually weaves the work together. It's academics who get to do that. And it is so amazing to just be able to honor you in this way and also hear your reflections for the first time. There have been so many times where I have walked just like trailing behind Dominque coming out of a meeting, and she just gets stopped. She gets stopped left and right walking down Augusta. She can't walk like 10 meters without somebody being like, Dominque, did you hear about this? Are you gonna hold a meeting about this? The amount of meetings that this woman has had to sit through on Zoom and in person. She's also vowed that she's never going to table again at like a public street-facing situation, and she has earned that right. The rest of us volunteers need to do that now. Like, I really mean it in the granular, everyday sense. There's just been so much going and going and going and doing the next thing, the next fight, the next development proposal that needs to be responded to, the next city council meeting where somebody needs to be paying attention. And you're doing this all outside of the time where for the first time we're meeting, your worlds are colliding, and you're part of all of these worlds that I only have one tiny viewpoint onto, your beautiful family and all of us, the neighborhood. You've just created worlds. You've created worlds where we are able to exist in a really authentic and honest way. So I'm so grateful and want to emphasize to everyone in the room, that's how significant this particular opportunity to hear Dominque's specific reflections, that is, I think, about to be very surprisingly personal, rather than, you know, how anybody else would try to have a take on the history of Kensington Market Community Land Trust. Truly, truly a special opportunity. And thank you so much for the time and effort that you have made this city what it is today. Thank you. I would like to introduce Dominque Russell to the stage.
Wow, thank you. Let me start by thanking Catherine and the planning program for this opportunity, because for a volunteer, as she just said, that opportunity to sit and reflect has really it's an extraordinary privilege. And I'm only halfway through, so the reflections that I'm bringing are sort of not, they're sort of the midpoint thoughts, but it is quite extraordinary to be able to stop and rest and think and read, and I'm very grateful. I am going to be talking about community, but not in the abstract. I'm going to be speaking very specifically. So let me start by acknowledging two community members who have been very important to me and essential to the Kensington community. Oh, and this is for those that like to see a plan. This is the plan of the talk. So yes, we're at the dedication. So first of all, Dave Pincus, an activist whose intervention helped shape Kensington Market. When I met him, he was in his 80s, and for some reason, he was so vigorous, it just never occurred to me that he wouldn't be around forever. What we lost when he died in 2020, an encyclopedic and deep historical knowledge of the neighborhood, boundless love for Kensington Market, and an extraordinary incisive intelligence. And more recently, Barbette, who I just knew as Barbette, and Barbette Kensington on Facebook was another key elder in the community. She loved our neighborhood, and like Dave Pincus, she knew everybody. She built community wherever she went by being curious about people. She was unusually direct. And if Dave Pincus could be counted on to steer us right, I really expected Barbette to let us know if we ever steered wrong. Both these people had a gift for attention. When you were with them, there was like nothing else was happening in the world. And I'm very grateful that I was able to stand in their light. The title of my talk is Community Activism, Displacement, and the Potential of Trust. I'm inside the story, so this isn't so much analysis as raw data, it's the stories. though I do gather a few threads, and I'd invite students to think about how you might organize this information probably quite differently from the way that I'm telling it. And I forgot to put my timer. So I'm here to talk about the Kensington Market Community Land Trust. I'm the co-chair of that organization. My co-chair, Kevin Barrett, isn't here because he earns his living as a musician, and he's off somewhere playing guitar right now. But I want to shout out to Kevin because the work that I'm going to be talking about is also very much his work. So the history of Kensington Market. The history of the Kensington Market Community Land Trust, KMCLT. So the KMCLT incorporated as a nonprofit in 2017. In 2021, we bought 5456 Kensington Ave, the Mona Lisa building, a mixed-use building, 12 residential units and 5 commercial. This is a short version of how we did it. So the KMCLT had been keeping an eye out on the what was for sale in the neighborhood, mostly through Martin Farkas, who is our real estate agent, thanks to the PNLT, Parkdale Community Land Trust, Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust, sorry, which you'll be hearing a lot about. In March 2021, I discovered that 5456 was for sale. But there was already an agreement for purchase and sale, APS in the lingo, already in place. So we were too late. I felt this in my bones, through my teeth, and to the tips of my hair as a dreadful, dreadful failure. That this building was on market and that we hadn't had a chance to even try to buy it felt devastating. My partner, who's an optimist, said, maybe it'll fall through. Maybe the deal won't work out. And that's what happened. I found out on a Saturday that we had until Tuesday to make an offer. But in order to make an offer, and I didn't know this, maybe some people know this, but in order to make an offer, you have to put some money down, so 5% of the purchase price. We needed 300,000. This was a Saturday, and we needed it for the Tuesday. I called Mike Layton, our then city councillor, the only time I've ever bugged him on a Saturday. And he said right away, okay, we need 30 people to loan us $10,000. We decided to start working our contacts right away. Kensington Market is a beloved neighborhood, and I thought, okay, we can do this. And I started to cold call my neighbors to ask for a loan. One of the neighbors I asked offered to loan us the full amount. They'd been part of the discussions about forming a land trust. They believed in the project, they believed in us, and they set us on our way to our first acquisition. That Tuesday, we put in an offer. We had an APS, and suddenly our volunteer organization was faced with the monumental task of putting together due diligence work on a very short timeline. Oops, sorry. The Affordable Housing Challenge Project stepped up and stepped in, getting us the funding to hire Tam. And she hit the ground running like a gazelle with a pack of lions behind her. Truly unbelievable, the time in which she so quickly learned so much and got us to where we needed to be. And partly, again, there was the generosity of the PNLT in sharing their knowledge and resources, and Josh in particular. So So a small parenthesis, one of the threads through this story is the relationship between, the importance of relationships between people, and particular people who share a vision, but also institutional support that serves as a catalyst. So let me say a little bit about the affordable housing project, specifically Susanna Bunce and Kuni Kamizaki. Kuni served as a sort of éminence grise for our organization. He would see both the forest and the trees, which is to say he always asked the right question at the right time. And his timeline, so you could say, you know, ask the right question, but then what is your answer going to mean in the long term? And that's a rare, have that practical, combined practical, you know, if you'd say, well, I'm not sure. And he could then say, well, there's all this research and this example and that example. His importance to this organization can't be underestimated. And Susanna has this generosity of putting forward community groups into the limelight and bringing those groups together, which is exceptional. So we had a deal. We had someone to put the deal together, and another key piece, a supportive city councillor, Mike Layton, who put forward a motion to finance half the KMCLT's acquisition via Section 37 funds and the multi-unit acquisition program. I hope I said that right, MURA, that model. So there's a number of videos out there that explain how we put the financing together. But what I want to underline here is the fact and the fundamental importance of that political support, but also the fact that because the PNLT's initiative in piloting MURA, there was a pathway for funding. And I'll give you a second to absorb that slide, that information. So the political support is important, but also it's a way in which that political support can be directly brought forward. And I say this all the time because I know it to be true. The PNLT's success contributed to the success of the KMCLT, and our success, I believe, will be helpful to Chinatown, Budo, other organizations that are planning in this way. (5456) Kensington Ave, the Mona Lisa building. I'm not sure if anyone else calls it the Banana Mona Lisa building. It's community owned. We're successfully managing it. We've made improvements to the HVAC system, other renovations. We continue to try and acquire buildings. We've not had a successful second acquisition. And if you want to know why, I can tell you a little bit more if you ask at the end. But to really understand what an achievement it is to own this building and why Mike Layton would agree to work his contacts for us on a Saturday afternoon, we need to jump back to a previous battle and then to a previous battle and talk about Friends of Kensington Market. So let me instead jump back a decade or so to 2012, when the two organizations were starting to take shape. In 2012, my neighbor Mitch had a gathering of elders. I was sort of reluctantly an elder in that at that meeting, and actually, probably the main reason I was there was as the chair of the parent council, Kensington Market Community School, which Dave Pink has had a lot to do with setting up, and which has a really interesting history for another time. Mitch said at that gathering, because we were gathering because of all there was development on 4 sides of the market. And he said, maybe it's time for something like a Friends of Kensington Market. In 2013, another neighbor, Venetia Butler, who was on the board of the Kensington Market Action Committee, KMAC, she organized a development breakfast. And one thing I remember about it was like, there was so much food, so much great food donated by various people in the market. Big changes were coming, notably a condo on College Street, which was fine. But there was a Loblaws coming with it, too close for comfort. And we felt that we needed to get organized or reorganized. And I came out of that discussion thinking, I wonder how we can raise awareness of the threats to Kensington Market. And I thought, social media. So I created a group on Facebook called Friends of Kensington Market, which I realized spelt FUCK'em as an acronym. And I worried about that briefly, and then I thought, yeah, that fits. And one of the amusing, seeing how politicians pronounce it. I'll say it maybe tonight in this hall as FOC'em, as Joe Cressy would call us. It was a formalization of this ad hoc group of neighbors and merchants who'd gotten together to try and negotiate with Tribute and Loblaws to try and protect our raw food sellers. And it seems so quaint now, the idea that this ragtag community group would get together and bring these monopolistic behemoths to the table to promise not to harm small business. But we did it, and they did. Loblaws did promise, for what it's worth, in much the same way as they promised not to fix the price of bread. So Friends of Kensington Market comes out of this process and out of KMAC's development watch, this anti-gentrification work to keep this rare open-aired market, one of the last in North America, as a market. We were building on a strong activist ethos that has kept a big business and chains out of Kensington Market, or those chains that have come to Kensington Market have left quite quickly. Nike, Second Cup, etc. Sylvia Lassam, who's sitting there, who you will see in a lot, well, she's in the photo as well. You'll see her in a lot of these photos because she's been there as a through line in all of this, first to arrive, last to leave, encouraging, guiding, daring us. Who's the motor behind the Kensington Market Historical Society. You can ask her about some of these fights or check their website because there's a lot of information. Now, the next 3 things happened simultaneously. 2013 was a crazy year. And I'd note that Friends of Kensington Market wasn't incorporated yet. So a lot of times when we tell the story of an organization, we're telling it from the time that it got, that it incorporated, when a lot of the work actually happens before that. So at the beginning of the Loblaws fight, someone had put up a petition on change.org. It was passionate, spontaneously, and incoherent enough that Lauren Draney, who was working for change.org at the time, got a hold of me to rewrite it. So another thread in this story, and in any history really, is how small individual actions can ricochet and take unexpected results. I'm very grateful to whoever it was that put up that first petition. While the Loblaws fight was going on, we found out that Casa Soriana had had their rent raised and that the building was possibly for sale. Casa Soriana and the Paveo family was a neighborhood institution where you could get bulk foods and toys, and they had these globes around the world. It's a really amazing place. And on most days, you could have a chat with Barbette in what was known as the office. In one of the email threads, one of the thousands, or at least it feels like thousands of email threads that I'm working through, I came upon one entitled Realty Trust in 2013, which suggested that we get together and buy the Casa Soriana building And Puria Lofty, who floated the idea, myself and a few other people were tasked with figuring out how to do it. I've always told this story in a really different way. So it's interesting for me to come upon that email, especially as the KMCLT is about to launch a bond campaign. And if you want to ask me about that at the end, I can talk a bit more. So at a demonstration against Loblaws, I turned to Laura and I said, we could crowdfund to buy that building. Now, I had a friend who lived in a trust in London, England, just outside Victoria Station. Some rich guy had bought that building so that in perpetuity, poor people, the deserving poor, but anyway, poor people could live in the center of London. So something that's happened, again, as a result of this visitorship is that I've read a lot now. And that story is not exactly how it happened. And there's a really interesting things happening on that front. Nevertheless, living in Kensington Market and through my discussions with Dave Pincus, I had a strong sense, and I think a lot of my neighbors share this, of having inherited something precious. And because in 2013, we could see the losses start cascade, the idea of in perpetuity had real resonance. Lauren knew a guy who was working on this stuff, and she put me in touch with Howard Tam. He provided me with some examples and research, and of course, the PNLT loomed large. So Friends of Kensington Market's first AGM, unofficially in 2014, was a sort of, it was the title itself, I can't remember, it's like an asset evaluation of some kind. It was a session run by Howard Tam to get a sense of where the community felt we were at, to create a map of the present and of future possibilities. It was about laying the groundwork for a CLT. At that point, we had some successes behind us. In the short months we'd organized, we'd wrestled down Loblaws, at least symbolically. We did, in fact, get the landlord to save the Casa Soriana. They did not raise the rent, and the building was sold, but later. Nevertheless, we saved our beloved office for a few years. At a pedestrian Sunday celebration, so this was to the landlord of the Casa Soriana. Thank you for choosing community. Adam Vaughan, who was our city councillor at the time, announced that RioCan, there he is there, RioCan, who had bought the Chroma radio site on Bathurst, was planning to bring Walmart to the edge of Kensington Market. Now, this is certainly a misstep on RioCan's part, because I don't think we could have mounted the massive campaign that we did without Walmart in the equation. It would have been the deepest incursion of a Walmart into the downtown, into a downtown of any city in North America. And it was a massive campaign, starting with Lauren, who's there, Lauren and I sitting down at the patio of Ideal Coffee and writing up a petition that many, many people told me would be useless, but that garnered so much attention, so much press, that Change.org hired a press person, attaché, whatever, to help me. And just to give you a sense, so at this meeting, we had this banner that I'll show you in a sec, and we were, of course, putting the finishing touches on the banner. We had to we're just like, okay, we'll just run there. It'll be faster than trying to get a cab. There was this scramble, and I get there, and I've done like so many interviews. And suddenly I'm at the public meeting, the big important public meeting, and my brain is empty, I swear. And so I said, turned to Lauren, I said, I need to know what to say. She's like, no, you're great, you'll be fine. I said, no, I need to know what to say. And so she texts the press guy who texts me back, and I have these like keywords, and I could go up there and speak. The campaign and those meetings, they were a tremendous show of community support and strength. A citywide love-in for Kensington Market and small business against corporate power. And there's some sort of irony, I think, in Kensington Market's slogan being to the City of Toronto, respect the official plan. At the neighborhood level, it was a show of unity. Cece Scriber from Courage My Love, she said, and I'm not sure if she said it or father said it, but she said it to me, which is that about Kensington Market, when you poke us, we fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. And I'll say that a jigsaw puzzle, there's lots of poking that happens between the pieces as well. And I can tell you stories about that if you ask. So the battle to save Kensington Market was on, with Friends of Kensington Market at the center, but a whole lot of support and individual activism. I'll note Projectity here, who helped us with our fundraising. There was so lots and lots of individual activism, and VideoFag set up a Walmart in Kensington Market. It was like a performance. The VideoFag has a really interesting history with Kensington Market, but it's if you dig into it, it's really interesting the way people responded to this. But it was around this time, in the flurry of the anti-Walmart campaign, that Dave Pincus said to me, fight development. You gotta fight. And sometimes you'll win. But you have to build, because sooner or later you'll lose. But you have to build for your soul. One thing that's important to point out is that none of this campaign, the victory against RioCan and by extension against Walmart, none of it would have been possible if a small group of my neighbors, Mitch, Graham, David, Sylvia, I believe, Sue, if these people hadn't fought and won at the Committee of Adjustment, because city planning approved RioCan's proposal to bring a multi-story shopping mall between two neighborhoods, the edge of Kensington Market. They approved it as a minor variance. So nobody would have known about this until it was built. So much as organizing this complicated community through Friends of Kensington Market was an achievement. Again, there is a lot to be said in this story for individual and small group actions that have huge repercussions. In 2014, we won. RioCan backed down, made concessions in height and use because planning students, floor plate matters a lot. Adam Vaughan came up to me and said, "You stopped a Walmart." And I was mostly just furious at the city for not having protected Kensington Market in the first place. We had been put in touch with a lawyer, Ian Flett, through the anti-Walmart fighters in Guelph and Leslieville's No Big Box campaign, who were very generous in supporting us, as was Paula Fletcher, who seems to have a special love for Kensington Market and who is, I think, underestimated as a politician. As Ian Flett was negotiating with RioCan, I remember there was a lunch with him and Laura, and we thought, okay, we'll take that victory and the negotiated settlement, which wasn't very much, and we'll just put it right into the CLT. In the interval, I'd gotten to know some members. I'd gotten to know about, and some members of the PNLT, gotten to know Josh, who was always the most joyful and fun person in the room, which is actually way more important. Again, if you, as I'm reading the history of other CLTs, I realize like a lot of it is just people getting along and sort of random things that happen. But being joyful is really important to a movement. So thank you, Josh. I'd learned a ton. And I say this again with some astonishment. I actually read next to nothing about CLTs before this visitorship. So what I knew, I learned from Josh and Cooney and the opportunities afforded to me through conferences, through them, Grounded Solutions in Oakland, Pittsburgh, and eventually one of our own in Montreal, at La Ville. And now this weekend, Toronto, which is really exciting. And there's a public event tomorrow that you should all come to. And I need to mention as well that KMAC and Sue Alexanian in particular chair in funding Friends of Kensington Market and these initial trips for the KMCLT. So with the monopolistic corporate Gorgon slain, we thought we could take the energy of that fight and put it directly to work in building a CLT. But it was actually difficult to do that, to my surprise. It might be that FACM wasn't the right vehicle, but there was resistance to using developer funds and a sense that what we had to do was fight. Kensington Market is really good at fighting. And I think in a way, people had so much fun in that fight, they wanted to keep doing it. I should say though, Kensington Market is also really good at community because, and sometimes I forget this because you think, oh, the community's been activated because every time there's an attack, the community gets really activated. And it's easy to think that's what activates community and forget that we do things, not so much recently, but we used to do this a lot. Things like making marmalade together, having street picnics, having going out and painting, dancing in the street. And I'm really grateful to Shamez and Port, people like that who keep doing that to remind us the importance of that as well. So KMCLT forms quite differently from the PNLT. I remember hearing about how the PNLT had carefully built up through organizations and, you know, studies that they'd done. And I thought, and I remember saying to Maggie, who like Sylvia was part of everything from the beginning, we're tiny. We can do this way faster. I remember being at a meeting in Parkdale and having just my mind blown by the way Josh included everyone. This was real practice of listening, of hearing. And one part of my brain was like, could we just get on with it? But what I've come to understand is that the many, many development battles, small scale and big, the fight for tenants, the multiple, multi-pronged and ever-growing email exchanges, the meetings, the wins and the trying, that was the groundwork. That was the community building, the patience that was needed for the KMCLT that eventually grew out of Friends of Kensington Market. That was what was needed to have strong roots. That was the trust. So to fill in that part of the story, and this is actually Maggie will talk about in a minute, that my neighbor Graham and those people that came to talk to us about Leslie from Leslieville, and in the corner there is Shamez, who was emceeing that evening. So to fill in that part of the story, at one of our AGMs, I gave a speech of a lifetime because I felt like I was turning a ship. and I made one of my neighbors cry. I was filled with the absolute conviction that we needed to do this project, that we could do together what we couldn't do ourselves. At that point in my life, at this point in my life, there is no change. I'd given up on home ownership, which implies actually that I thought that I would ever own a home, but my parents don't own homes. No one that I've ever in my family owns. So I didn't really, I guess I had the dream that I would jump there. But what I really wanted was security of tenure for myself and for my family, to be able to stay in the neighborhood that I loved. And I wanted the same thing for my neighbors. And I never doubted that we could do it. And I actually don't know why I never doubted, but I didn't. So we had a couple of meetings, and one of our plain speaking neighbors said, "These meetings are boring. We know that we want to do it. So why don't you just go and do it and then come back when it's ready?" So that's what we did. We formed, Friends of Kensington Market formed a working group, myself, Maggie, Sylvia, and Erica Hennebury, Andrew Wincher, and Alexander Gopin. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone in that group. So we got together, had these meetings, we drew up the bylaws, came up with the first board. And again, I'll underline that kind of catalyzing encounter between community and the university, in this case, students and ex-students. We had our soft launch in 2016 at the Keep Six Gallery, sorry. Rafi offered us the space. And here's my neighbor, David Perlman, who sent us off with a song. As rousing as my speech might have been at that meeting, it wasn't the decisive link in creating or in getting the KMCLT going. There was a seismic shift in 2014 and something that helped create new energy for the KMCLT. I want to illustrate it with what might be a forgotten incident, but for me was really significant. In 2014, there was a rooming house fire on St. Andrew. Friends of Kensington Market organized a collection for those who had been affected, and many people had lost their home. Almost every business had a donation jar, except one business, I swear, said to me, "Yeah, we don't really have space for community." And that to me was a harbinger of change that was coming. The result of the fire was multiple. There was solidarity, but there was a group in the neighborhood who organized a safety watch, what we called a snitch walk. To point at, so they had actually, I didn't realize this as well. I found this out looking back on the email. There were 22 people there from all different areas of the bureaucracy, the police, and basically to point out unlicensed rooming houses. Now, of course, we want people to be safe in their homes, but we've seen in Kensington Market and elsewhere how safety and hygiene get used as agents of gentrification and displacement. So Fuckham got wind of the safety walk, and luckily Mother Maggie was able to attend because we weren't actually invited. And Maggie was able to shift the tone somewhat. And here I have to tell you a story about Maggie Helwig, if you don't know her. I first met her in the red pepper space. She arrived before everyone else at this meeting. So she was sitting down and she seemed this, so there was this small, mild woman who said she was the priest at St. Stephen's in the Field, which later becomes the headquarters for both Fuckham and KMCLT. So after the next meeting, there was a demonstration to express our sorrow and outrage at the shooting of Sammy Yatten, which some of you might remember. So at the end of the meeting, I raced down to, I think it was on Dundas. I raced down and I'm disheveled and sweaty and out of breath. And I find that Maggie's already there, centered in her priestly garb, just exuding calm and force. And I've had trouble not thinking of her as Superman ever since. Her contributions to the community and to the KMCLT can't be underestimated. So the upshot of the snitch walk was that tenants were displaced. As Maggie put it in an email, the indications are that the crackdown on rooming houses is taking place in such a way that tenants are simply put out on the street. Now, some middle-class families were affected by this because some of the people who lost their homes were parents whose children went to Kensington Community School. And it was a kind of revelation, I think, for people that in the fire, some of those people that lost their homes were families. So this idea that single family dwelling is where families live is certainly not the case in Kensington Market. I was contacted by one family to try and help another family because their son's best friend was being evicted. The Chinese family wouldn't accept help because of the uncertainty of their immigration status and actually of the landlord. So they were very worried about causing any trouble. But I'll never forget what the mother said to me. They'd been in Kensington Market for 10 years. They'd found a place to live in Scarborough. She said to me, it's exile. So where previously we were thinking about a CLT, so there's Maggie, my neighbor Sherry, who will come up in the story and a little later, and Mike Layton. So previously where we were thinking about the CLT to save our neighborhood as a market, to support our neighborhood facing commercial neighbors, the people you would see every week, the people that you could, oh no, you don't need to buy apples today, your husband was here earlier, the people that you could phone and say, hey, I'm sending my 5-year-olds to get an ice cream, I'll pay you later. That, those people, that sense of the community. So we'd been thinking about this external fabric of the neighborhood, which is really important, but the internal fabric, its residential core, was being shredded by landlords. Kensington Market is like Parkdale, a renter's neighborhood with a lower median income than most of the downtown. We were losing our neighbors, but things were about to get worse, so much worse. And I'll tell you 2 more stories before I loop back to the beginning. Just say this, on the day that I find out that the encampment on at Bellevue is going to be cleared so that a community group that I've never heard of can build a pollinator's garden. I could never have imagined people living in tents being pushed out from that terrible housing into worse. In 2016, I get an email from my neighbor Shamez Amlani of Pedestrian Sundays fame with the title, Remember the Name Claude Bitton. Through a series of moves, CB Holdings had bought 5 buildings in a power of sale purchase and immediately proceeded to try and evict the tenants. Patrick Morrison, who was the BIA coordinator at the time, organized a community meeting to support the tenants. Puria organized a phone tree for when tenants felt threatened because they came with baseball bats. They changed locks. They stole people's stuff. I, myself, my partner, a group of people stayed in an apartment so that John Rose, who we'll see in a sec, could go and visit his daughter who lived out of town if he was sure that they would come and take his things. And so that's John Rose, who was the artist who had this very rare studio shared space, no longer there, no longer a neighbor. So there was strong unity between tenants and homeowners, neighbors, full on tangible support, including financing legal battles. But it's really hard to stay when you're threatened in your own home. And we mostly lost that fight. 38 Kensington Place was and is, despite regulations, a ghost hotel. There's one long-term tenant that remains, a friend of Kensington Market board member now. And that's another piece of this neighborhood puzzle falling apart. Airbnbs, ghost hotels, emptying out this neighborhood of renters. This is our requiem for affordable housing. So prescient. And this is one part of a long and sometimes, I think, fruitless campaign against ghost hotels. Given all this, when my neighbor Sherry, we saw it previously, told me on January 1st, 2018, that she and her fellow tenants at 5456 Kensington had received eviction notices, that is, notices printed off the internet and stuck under their door. We'd learned that we had to get there quickly to support the tenants. Ian Flett, again, helped organize tenant legal advice. Our city councillor, Mike Layton, brought together city bureaucrats from across departments. Kensington Bellwood's legal clinic gave support. Our MPP at the time, and Dong, sent people. Jessica Bell would later do the same. And by then, because of the fight at 38 Kensington Place, a few Baton tenants who managed to stay in their apartments, and they're still there. Other neighbors who had fought landlords to stay in their home and won, we had examples and support of that this could be done. Colin Davidson hung out with the punks on the stoop, Cece Scriber of Courage My Love, Gwen Bang from the BIA, Jessica Bell, Mike Layton, so many people with the same message, stand your ground. It's really, really hard to do that when you are threatened with eviction. And we say this message over and over again, but tenants need support. They are really the front line of preserving buildings and neighborhoods. And because the tenants did stand their ground, the building's value as a ghost hotel, I believe it was a cannabis destination hotel, that was the plan. Because the tenants did not leave for the most part, the value of it as a hotel, ghost hotel, dropped, and the KMCLT was able to buy the building. So that closes the loop, and I'd love to end on that triumphant note. Sorry, that was the part of the fight. I'd love to end on that triumphant note because I'm very proud of what we've accomplished, but the housing crisis is such that it's false to stop there. And I've left out a lot of things. The Bellevue parking lot, you can ask me about that. I'll be happy to elaborate. But underlying this story of community activism and hours of volunteer work is the story of the failure of governments, of the City of Toronto's failure to protect the neighborhood it uses to advertise itself as a multicultural and vibrant city, while it promotes homogenization and big business and actively promotes gentrification. Failure of the municipal, provincial, and federal governments to take seriously their responsibility to house their citizens, all their citizens, not the deserving poor. Housing is a human right, and yet policy after policy promotes the profit of landowners to the detriment of that basic right. CLTs exist in the space of that failure. We can't afford to keep the affordable, or we can't keep the affordable housing that exists in our neighborhoods. We can't build affordable housing in our community without governments investing in us in community. The potential of trust to acquire more land, because we will find a way to acquire a commercial building, because we will find a way to build small housing on the parking lot in the space behind 54, 56. If there is a way, we will find it. But this can't be done. We cannot make affordable housing unless we have government investing in the community. KMCLT and CLTs mean that the investment of the state will not go in eventually to private hands. That is so important, and that is the potential of trust. That's the potential part. Just because I want to make sure that all of this is in community, particular people doing particular things, taking particular actions, supporting in particular ways. I also just want to recognize the contributions of these photos. So Donna Lipchuk, who took the picture of the first photo of Barbette, the portrait of Barbette that appeared on 54, 56 very shortly after she passed, by Rachel Jane, Shengru Kai, who did the KMCLT logo, Rafi, Ryan Rubin, who's kind of the unofficial KMCLT photographer, and Jay Gibson, who took the second portrait of Barbette, Videofag, Alex Gray, who took the portrait of the community, and Alexander Gopin, who took the pictures of our soft launch, we called it. So I don't know if you have any questions.
Earlier this year, I raised the alarm about the Kensington Avenue sale where they were trying to sell multiple houses, including some that they didn't have under contract. I've not heard any updates. I've been getting unhinged messages from the guy trying to sell the properties without the owner's consent, but I'm wondering if the land trust has heard any updates about that ongoing land assembly.
So it's an imaginary land assembly. So there has been, so we tried to buy 27, 29, would have been a really good and efficient way to protect affordable housing, affordable commercial housing, and protect as well the Kensington Ave from that potential land assembly. Unfortunately, we were not able to do that. As far as, so there was a heritage placed on those buildings, which is as meaningful as a Loblaw's promise at this time, I believe. I could be wrong.
I will forward what I got from him because he sent me an even more stranger one going all the way down to Dundas and across Dundas to Spadina, which I don't think any of the owners have sold to him, but he's been sending very strange messages to me trying to figure out who leaked it to the media.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, CB Holdings has a tendency to not hire the best in the field. So, yeah, it was really frustrating that we couldn't, just buy those buildings. Weird Toronto thought, oh, we could just buy the whole block. Just to tell this story, so there's two buildings. There's a lot behind. So these were bought by CV Holdings in addition to some of the old Victorians. The renters that are in those across, I don't have an image, but across the street, they're safe in their houses. They fought for 3 years and they won. But so the CV Holdings is attempting to sell really what they're trying to do is sell the back lot, I believe, which is an empty lot. And the part of the reason that they would want to sell that is because it's a contaminated lot. It's a bit landlocked and awkward. So they're suggesting that they would be able to assemble land that thus far they have not assembled. But
sale without the owner's consent, right? There was 2 or 3 that were put for sale and the owners didn't have them under contract.
so a land assembly, as I've learned from my real estate agent, Martin Farkas, is that one agent holds the right to sell all of those buildings. The agent that is currently in place does not. So yeah, that's and it's very strange that they would ask who would leak it to the media, because I think they did it themselves. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Dominic. Thank you so much for such a wonderful talk, and to see what was happening behind the scenes for so many years. I've been watching as a neighbor in Alexandria Park. There's the Kensington Safe Streets plan, and I watched the city council on it and was shocked at some of the sheer division amongst people in Kensington, people outside of Kensington, and all the different attitudes. I'm wondering, like, how does the Kensington Market Land Trust understand the goals of this project, or support or don't support? I'm just like really curious where it falls on that line. Yeah.
I'm going to speak personally to it. So I've been organizing the opposition to that plan. I see the plan as a gentrification on steroids plan. I see it something that I've experienced as a person outside the planning sphere is this thrust of place making and the difficulty of seeing the place that is there. And so it's confusing to me why an area that is beloved, that is so popular. I used to give these bizarre tours, gentrification tours, to planning students from like Denmark and places like that. People come because there is this rare thing. And Toronto goes, hey, we could make it like Europe. And so the difficulty of like, there is this place works. Why would you need to do a profound transformation? I won't be able to articulate this really clearly, but there is this very interesting land trust in Liverpool. And one of their signs is nowhere. But nowhere is now here. And I think I see it. It's so interesting to me that when you talk to people who were adamantly for pedestrianization, they're talking about a future. And they're talking about, they're not talking about the present. And yet, it's really difficult for me, and partly, you know, I'm showing individuals, people, and I think if you listen to the deputations at City Council, there's so many people telling those stories. And what to me pedestrianization is to say, you know, that on the ground stuff, yeah, those people, but there's a future. That future is without those people, and that's fine because it will be an interesting space. It's something that I don't understand. I do understand, however, that for the city, And I don't think this is a problem particular to any administration or to the city of Toronto in particular. But for the city, change is a good. Change is a good, period. And we can sort of see it as well in this provincial policy of highest and best use, which is just, and I remember, and again, this is not specific to, but I remember standing on College Street with Adam Vaughan, who was our city councillor, who's great to work with. The best meetings ever with Adam Vaughan. He would like take you aside and talk to you for like, it's like, okay, ding, 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 ding. We would have 5-minute meetings in between various other things that we're doing. So he points at College Street, which I actually love. So many places that I love. And then just, you know, it's like, yeah, so that's going to be, I'm like, but it is, but it doesn't matter what it is, it's to be. So this idea, I mean, it's particularly frustrating in Kensington Market because I think the city of Toronto is filled with places that need activation, that need place making. You know, there's so many places that you could make. And why make it in Kensington Market? Because Kensington Market is symbolic, because Kensington Market is a tourist destination, and because I think change is a good. And on some level, I think that gentrification for the city is a good, because prices go up and that's fine. So I am virulently against it as an organization. I think we are an anti-gentrification organization, and we exist. I mean, part of our objects are to preserve the form and function of Kensington Market, and part of the form and function of Kensington Market is you know, the fruit sellers, but it's also this place to start. The exciting thing about Kensington Market is that there's still newcomers starting new businesses in Kensington Market. And I think that we should be supporting that rather than thinking about it as a destination, you know, yeah. I think the city would be happy if there was a plaque that said, this used to be an exciting place. Honestly. More questions?
I'm just kind of curious to know how the discussions are going with the commercial property owners in Kensington. I've spent a lot of time in that area, and I've noticed, I think there's one fruit market left, basically. Yeah. So even in the time of like 5 to 10 years, there's been probably 3 to 5 fruit markets close. Things like Parallel are moving in, great falafel, but like pretty upscale stuff. So I'm curious to know how those discussions are going and what the buy-in is from kind of longstanding businesses, Global Cheese, other kind of tenants or tenant owners of commercial properties.
The BIA is, and this is one, you know, so at the moment, the BIA is working very hard to support raw food sellers. That, you know, in some ways, the pessimistic side of me was like, you know, when we said that there was a problem that Loblaws would move in, what we said would happen was that we would lose our fruit stands, we'd lose raw food sellers, bars would come in. I don't think at the time we conceived of how many breed sellers there would be. Just walking by the grocery store that's become, you know, like weed shop. I'm like, how do people, I don't know, do they shop in all these various places? But obviously that, so a lot of what we said would happen, happened. You know, the KMCLT has a very good relationship with the BIA. And I think there is deep concern that those legacy businesses will be pushed out. And so, there, you know, there's been offers from business owners to say, you know, like, I'm really interested in in helping this this fight, which is, you know, the importance for small businesses and what's happening. And the, you know, business speak a different kind of language, but it's like, what if nobody can afford the rent? And that, you know, the ultimate like gentrification is really empty storefronts. Or what we're seeing on so it's an issue. I think the commercial field is simply the Wild West. There's no protection whatsoever, and the types of businesses that have come in and fixed up, you know, a space, and then the owner goes, "Hey, thank you for increasing my property. Goodbye." I just, you know, we've lost. And the other thing about small businesses is that small business, we think of culture. When we think of culture, we're like, let's go to the museum. But culture is so often comes through these small businesses that create community. I tell this story all the time. I'll tell you again, of Yvonne, and I can't remember her last name, but she came to the market in the 70s. She's a Black woman, came to the Jewish market at the time as it was starting to change. The Hungarians and Portuguese had started to move in. And so it was a mix, but she starts this store that's the Caribbean corner, and that becomes the Caribbean corner. I mean, that creates that. One of the spaces that we lost was you know, an electronic music dance place, and that creates you know, these community spaces. So I mean, at the moment, the city of Toronto belatedly is going, "Oh no, what should we do about our main streets?" Because it's the city of Loblaws and Shoppers, and you know, and that's where the issue of floor plate. Like, if you're inviting the only business that can fit in a space in the condo are these big companies, you're inviting homogenization. So I think the Kensington Market BIA is an ally in this and that to the CLT.
I wanted to thank you for this talk and a lot of inspiration. And also, I'm the director of the Urban Studies program here at U of T. And so I want to thank FOCUM and the Land Trust for being such a great host to our students over the years, and really inspiring them to think differently about their future roles in city building, whatever that might be. Keisha being one of them. And you invited us early on to potentially ask you about why there hasn't been a second building purchased. And so I know part of that story is definitely the lack of investment by the government in these types of things. But what else is there to that story as to why you had success in this early moment, but have been challenged to expand?
The very short answer to that is a shift in city councillor and you know, that relationship. There's things that you learn, I think, you know, buildings that you can possibly acquire. Really, I am learning not to invest in this way, but I really wanted to, we had a family, their building was for sale. Let's acquire that building. The financing that you can get for, you know, a building that's the typical building in Kensington Market, so smaller, is difficult. One aspect of 2729 that's important to point out is that there was too much commercial. And so that's a piece that we're trying to figure out, because there's support for residential acquisition. So we didn't get Mura for 2729 because there was too much commercial. So that's a piece of the puzzle, is that there's not a lot of sort of bigger apartment buildings that we could buy. I think as well, there is such like people want insane prices for their buildings. And I think there is just a delusionary aspect to you know, to the real estate market, and it's gonna fall down. I think eventually, I don't know, maybe I've been waiting for years, but on the commercial side of things, certainly the commercial buildings, I would say they're just too expensive, and apartment buildings are also just. And I guess the thing that I said at the end, residential housing affordable. I mean, we are not outside the cycle of mortgage, right? We have to, like the 54, 56, we still have a mortgage. We still have to pay our mortgage. And there is this cycle where if we buy something at the price that it's on offer for, then we can't make it affordable. And so, you know, there is an important thing of security of tenure, but I'm not sure as a land trust that we want to be offering unaffordable rents. So that's another piece there.
Hi, my name is Dave Jamar, and I live in the market. So I just wanted to say I'm really grateful and appreciative for the amazing work that you're doing in preserving our community. I guess my question is what's the progress in purchasing the 25 Bellevue Avenue parking lot?
Great question. So thank you for that. So the idea for the Bellevue parking lot, I have to tell you this story. So the Bellevue parking lot used to be housing. And it was one of the battles that Dave Pincus lost. And so, you know, he wanted it to be returned to housing. And so I was in Oakland, and Josh introduced me to this activist in New York. And I said to the activist in New York, so we have this parking lot, and it would be great if it was housing. How do we get the city, like, how do we, you know, get the city to give it to us? And he said, you don't ask, you take it. And so we had this plan that we would have had these car, I mean, it was an imaginary idea, but you know, we'd have these car-shaped tents, and we would have this, it would have been the funnest evening ever of like this community sleep out in the parking lot to make the point that, you know, we need housing and not housing for cars. And it was just around the time of the election, the war on the car election, I can't remember. And our city councilor said, no, please don't do that. And passed a motion, actually, one of Joe Cressy's last motions was to have the city bureaucracy work with the KMCLT to start to think about that parking lot in a way beyond parking. We had previously had a visioning exercise, and so we're waiting. The parking lot's been declared surplus. The problem is, in this particular context, it would be enormously expensive to build, and in some ways, the chance to preserve the affordable spaces that we have has more urgency. I know that parking lot will become housing with a green roof and that stuff. I'm not sure that this is the moment. And I think the city is aware of that. If you could build like a 25, you know, or 30-story building, then it might start to make sense. But if you do that, then you'll wreck Kensington Market. So that makes the project more complicated. And so we haven't been pushing it because of that.
So I'm sorry, I'm going to interject and say that's what we have time for. There'll be time to connect with Dominque after. Coming back to Chi's wonderful introduction, I do want to note what a wonderful Bousfield visitor you've been, Dominique, and how you have just absolutely not squandered your time, and you're always in the department and going through the hundreds of emails and reading about the community land trust. And it's so heartening to have that presence among us. I also would say, as a planning educator, I'll walk out of here remembering a couple things, including how tenants who are often not given any standing in official planning processes are the front line. And also how, I mean, we tend to think too technically, too quickly, and think of things like CLTs as tools and technical tools, and you've really underscored the base of such planning tools that lies in communities. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing so generously. Thank you for your contributions to our city. Let's all thank Dominique. So thank you also to you for coming, and I hope you will linger for the next hour or so right around the corner in the reception area. There's some food and beverages and a nice space to connect. Thanks. Probably don't want to. Wow, that was. Truly, I am too. Super great.